in close coordination with the District Attorney's Office, this case was presented to the grand jury, which ultimately led to Davis being indicted on charges of murder. Before I hand it off to the District Attorney's Office, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Detective Mogg and all the other detectives that were not only assigned this case and reviewed this case, but all the other detectives from other agencies that assisted us in this investigation. They know who they are, and thank you very much for all the assistance you provided. It does not go unnoticed. And lastly, one of the most important things, in my opinion, is we need to make this be a reminder that the charge of murder does not have a statute of limitations. This agency has been and is invested in solving our cold case homicides so that we can bring closure to those families and justice for those victims of homicide. And with that, I will turn it over to the Clark County District Attorney, Steve Wilson.
Thank you, Lieutenant Johansson. I appreciate it. Good afternoon. I am the Las Vegas, Clark County District Attorney, Steve Wolfson. It has often been said, justice delayed is justice denied. It's a quote we hear often and for many, many years when talking about our legal system, but not in this case. Today, justice will be served in the murder of Tupac Shakur. I'd like to acknowledge the relentless work of the many Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department homicide detectives. We've mentioned Detective Cliff Mogg many times, and we can't mention his name enough. He is the detective, along with his colleagues, that brought this case here today to you. A Clark County grand jury has indicted Dwayne Keith Davis with 1 count of open murder with use of a deadly weapon with a gang enhancement. Davis will appear in court in the next few days or so for a hearing to determine his custody status and to set a jury trial date. This grand jury has been receiving evidence for months and has determined there is sufficient evidence to justify the filing of this criminal indictment. I've assigned 2 of my top prosecutors, Mark DiGiacomo and Banu Palal, to prosecute this case. I know a lot of people have been watching and waiting for this day. Tupac Shakur is a music legend, and for a long time, this community and worldwide have been wanting justice for Tupac. Today, we are taking that first step. Tupac was actually quoted as saying, "Death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss is what dies inside while still alive. Never surrender." Well, we didn't surrender thanks to the great work of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department under the leadership of Sheriff Kevin McMahill, Lieutenant Johansson, retired Detective Cliff Mogg. I am proud to announce the return of this document. This is the indictment we've been waiting almost 3 decades for. It spells out the facts and circumstances and what justifies a Clark County grand jury in returning an indictment. Justice will be served. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'd just like to say that the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department Homicide Section year over year solves over 90% of the homicides that occur in our jurisdiction. You won't find that anywhere else in the United States. For those family members that have lost somebody that we haven't solved that case, I want you to know, just like in this case, we're not going to give up. I also say to you that as we begin, we're going to take a couple of questions. I want you to remember in your questioning that this investigation, subsequent arrest, and now indictment is only the beginning of the process. And we are committed and invested in ensuring a successful prosecution as we move forward. So with that, we'll take any questions that you might have. Ken?
Excuse me, Sheriff, thank you. Have you been in touch with the Shakur family, anyone within here today? And if so, can you characterize what they told you?
The family has reached out to my office. I imagine also to Metro. We've been in communication with them. We understand that they are welcoming this news. They are pleased with this news, and they are certainly aware of the return of this indictment.
Do you anticipate them being at court for arraignment of Mr. Davis?
I don't think they'll be at the arraignment. I mean, that's a relatively short hearing, but I know that they'll be involved. I know that they'll want to be apprised of what goes on a frequent basis.
The back.
Could you talk about any of the statements that he made that piqued your curiosity again or got you back into this case?
Jason, you want to answer that? We're not going to talk about any particular statements, but maybe he can address that globally.
What I'll say is there's a lot that's going to come out when it comes time for trial, but he provides his own series of statements that are very consistent with the evidence that we have on the scene that we've obtained through our investigation. I'll leave it at that.
Can you identify anything that came from the service of the warrant in July that you didn't know before?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I'll say about the search warrant that we did in July, that we obtained information or evidence during that execution of that search warrant that corroborated information obtained through our investigation, and I'll leave it at that until we go to trial.
Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Tiffany Lane with Channel 3. So I know that this was obviously a big move. Is there anyone else being looked at this point? I know a lot of people have passed away since this incident, but is anyone else being looked at as part of this investigation still?
So as I stated earlier, in this case, the only living suspect related to this investigation is Dwayne Davis. All other three suspects are deceased.
Vanessa.
Thank you. Vanessa Murphy, Channel 8. Steve, can you talk about the murder charge if he is not the one believed to have pulled the trigger?
Yes, well, under Nevada law, and this is the law in most states in this country, you can be charged with a crime whether you're directly involved or whether you're an aider and abetter. We have an aiding and abetting statute, which provides that if you help somebody commit a crime, you can be equally as guilty. The best example is two guys that agree to commit a bank robbery, and one of them goes into the bank with a gun and actually commits the robbery, and the other guy is the getaway driver. Never went in the bank, but he assisted the guy that went in the bank, so he's equally guilty. That is one of the theories in this case as well.
Last question.
Do investigators believe that Davis was the only person behind the plan to kill Tupac, or was he one of multiple people who came up with this plan?
I think the best way to characterize that is Dwayne Davis was the shot caller for this group of individuals that committed this crime, and he orchestrated the plan that was carried out to commit this crime.
And can you say how he obtained the gun or who he obtained it from?
We know that he obtained it from a close associate. That a lot of the actual details of who specifically, all that come out at trial, but he obtained it from a close associate of his.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can you say if Mr. Davis has said anything since his arrest?
Mr. Wilson, Steve,
Does he have